Well, unless you
hopefully.
can turn that light off behind
Oh,
you
yeah.
and put that light on.
Oh.
If I could do that, I would be more of a goddess than I already am because that's the sun.
Oh my God, yes, Victoria.
Hello and welcome to Frequency Broads. I am Victoria.
And I am Tara, and we are here with the one and only mother of my very being, April Entrieri.
Hi,
And I am so excited that you're here.
me too.
Victoria and my mom have yet to meet. We've saved this for this very moment. So, Mom, why don't you tell us a
Yes.
little bit about what you do?
Okay. So I am a medium. A lot of people say medium psychic. I'm a medium intuitive, connected to divine source, and I offer guidance and help using those abilities.
Okay, so the whole podcast community knows that I grew up spiritual because of you. You necessarily didn't have the same experience, obviously, you know
True.
that. So can you talk about how you discovered your gifts and then like how it's evolved into this phase of your life?
Sure. So I remember my first memory is 3 years old. And it wasn't just people I saw, it was creatures and beings. And so to me, fairies walked next to me and giants came and spoke to me, and at 3, people, quote unquote, especially in that time, imagination. And it just continuously evolved. I spoke to people who were past, people, friends of my grandmother, friends of my great grandmother, came to me as soon as they passed. It was, and I would go out and say, oh, so and so came to visit me. And again, growing up in the time I did, it was more or less, no, 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 no. And I think I was on a school trip is when it really resonated with me. I was on the trip with your Uncle Petey, and we were in Richmond Town in Staten Island, and I was having a full blown conversation with this soldier standing there, ripped. Pretty sure there was blood somewhere, but he looked tired. I remember that. And we were having this conversation, and I remember all the kids standing behind us, and Uncle Petey just walking up and going, "Who are you talking to?" And I'm like, "Talking to the guy, the man in the uniform." And he says, "Nobody's here." I said, "What are you talking about?" He's like everybody else that I talk to. And he goes, "Not everybody can see what you see." Now you have to think about it. We were maybe 8 or 7. We were young, but that's how we spoke. And that was exactly what he said to me. And it was that moment that I went, "What do you mean?" Like, I thought everybody saw what I saw. I really thought everybody spoke to those on the other side or saw fairies or dragons. That was just a thing for me. So it was interesting because then once it became so known, then you had to kind of, when I was growing up, it was dial it back a notch, keep it quiet, keep it quiet. And then in the blink of maybe 7 years when I hit teenage age, then it was very popular to be into the occult and be, connected. And then it was okay. And then it was not okay. This is the sway of general belief systems as I grew up. It was yes, no, yes, no. But it was always kept on the down low. And it just evolved. It evolved because I never stopped being connected. I never believed when somebody said, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about," or I didn't, because I just knew. It's like I knew that you weren't gonna convince me otherwise.
Mhm.
Tara could tell you. If I know, I know.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny that you say it too because my yaya, your mother,
Mm-hmm.
is a born again Christian.
True.
Not very much involved in this spiritual realm.
Not now.
I know that Nanny, her mother, was connected, but I didn't think she was open about it. So and then my dad was like, "No, not believing, not real. So
Right.
from my perspective, I didn't even know, like, yeah, I knew you had these abilities since you were little, but I didn't know that you like were open about it until I thought it was after the divorce that you were more open about it.
We did. So literally, we used to joke about coming out of the broom closet. But when your when your dad used to go to work, people would come to me for readings.
Oh,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
I
I
did not
I
know that.
literally was in, was in the quote unquote closet. So people would come, um, like some of the soccer moms would come at night after I put everyone to bed, and I would give them readings. It would either be card readings or just medium readings or intuitive, whatever I was picking up. I mean, I would be out in restaurants and just turn around and
Oh,
what you
I
have
know.
experienced.
I know. Wherever we go, you're like, hold on, I need to go talk to this stranger. I'm like, do you though? Do you?
Do
But
you?
you
Are you
do. You
sure?
do.
Are you sure?
So
So
it wasn't until after the divorce that you were then out of the quote unquote broom closet, right?
yes, yes,
Fully.
because then it was Uncle Petey and I with you girls and your brothers for a short period of time, living in the same house. And he was very connected, and he really truly wanted he wanted you girls to embrace this very strongly. So we did what we could in the confines of, how everybody knows when you're in the mundane world and a divorce is going on, everything is taboo. That's not
Hmm.
in the realm of, you know, the norm, so to
Yeah.
speak. But yeah, at that point, I was wildly out of the closet. I was like, yes,
Yeah.
let's
Well,
do
that's
it.
what led me to be here doing this. So
Yeah.
thanks, Uncle Peter, for pushing mom to get me out there. I mean, I had no choice, especially I believe I've talked about this on the podcast. Victoria, you can remind me if I did, but when my parents first got divorced and we moved in with my uncle, it was like in one of the oldest houses on Staten Island.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
we even had like the paper come and write an article about how haunted it was. So I, 5-year-old me was like, well, here we go.
Yep.
We're
Oh,
off to the races now.
she was it was funny because I don't know if you remember this, Tara, because you were little, but the house was very old, and there used to be, from the kitchen to the den was, in when the house was first built, is where the servant quarters would go back and forth. And Tara one day is just turns around and she's looking and she's like, well, who are all those people going back? Because it was packed with spirit. So my brother and I just looked like, oh, they're just friends. They're just family, because we weren't going to go into, it was a lot. There's a lot going on in that house.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you already had the ability, and Britain coming, that just enhanced it. The move and me being more open about it really
Hmm.
brought your gift to light, I think, stronger.
So, April, it sounds like you just get like direct hits from source. And so you just get these really clear messages. But can you tell us a little bit more about what it's like to engage with spirits or entities that come to you?
So I get this. First of all, it's amazing, and it's constant, which is why I am probably one of the most forgetful people, believe it or not. Because I'm constantly hearing things, and I can ignore it and I can push it away. Like, for instance, the fact that your guides are standing behind you with like this huge message about your relationship views. So I don't know if we're going to get into that or not, but just saying. So
Is that for,
you're
wait, is
asking
that
me
for
to,
Victoria?
yes.
Shit.
So as you're getting ready to ask me the question, so I get I'm already knowing that you have somebody behind you. And it's that, but which is funny, I get this look. And I don't know if it came across, because I try really hard to mask the look now that I know I have one. But that TV show, That's So Raven, I never realized that's what I did. And people are like, that's the look you get. And I'm like, what?
Oh, it
You get
is.
this, and you don't know it. And immediately, everybody's thing is, what? What do you see? who's behind me. It's because they know it now. But that connection it's so strong, and it's if you're having a conversation with somebody that you're working with, that's what it's like for me. And there are times where I can just walk away from it and say, that's all right, thanks, we don't need to. But it's being born with that knowing, and that's honestly how I felt. But I have received a download, which they told me exactly that you came into this world, your soul, with a knowing. So you can't. There's no detach from that, and it's very warm in those moments you have when you don't have it, like when you're going through a transition. You feel lost. You feel like, wait a minute, what just happened? But I don't know if I'm answering your question, by the way, so you have to let me know if I'm not.
You are,
But
yeah.
it's that constant feeling of you're never alone. It's a constant feeling of having guidance and warmth, and that's the best way I can describe it. And I never don't I there is never a moment where I don't feel some type of love or connection. So it just makes it easier for me. And I know I lose it when I get a little too mundane, and then I'm like,
Mm.
oh, not that I lose it, but they kind of go, hey, hey, come back, come back, because that's where I'm supposed to be. And but yeah, they're right behind you. You got you got to rephrase your wording about relationships. We're gonna have to talk about that. Your just saying.
So I'm glad you're approaching it the way that you are right now, because something that I have been working towards is the concept of when a spirit or a being is engaging with you to share their message, right? Victoria's guide's coming through to be like, hey, we need to tell her message. But maybe your higher self or your human self in this moment is like, now's not the time.
Mm-hmm.
Or your higher self says, no, that person doesn't actually need to hear it, but their ancestor or their beings are like, but say it, but say it, but say it. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, good question.
So it's really it's funny. It's when your being in the human body really becomes an asset for you. So like this, and I don't know if you know, it's my words will hesitate, or my throat will get dry, or I will lose the train of thought. Like I'll lose the message. And that's how I know my higher self is kicking in and saying, not now.
Mm.
And I have learned now when those messages come through to stop and say, okay, are you just telling me this so that I know it, so I can get a more in depth feeling about this person? Or do you want them to know? And there are times when I'll be like, because you're annoying. Uh, literally was like, you're annoying because I can't give a message if you're that, 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 that. But that's exactly what it is. And you have to learn to recognize. The hardest thing about dealing with your higher self is you got to make sure that your ego doesn't override.
Mm-hmm.
So it always comes back to the same thing. If it flows and it feels peaceful, you're giving the message the way it should be. If you start to get angsty or that, they're not meant to hear that. And the way that I'm giving it is exactly what you said, Ta. It's okay, I get it, but this is not now. This is later. I feel like they just want me to be conscious of the fact that I have to pass the message on. That's how this particular, and I know it's your guides. It's not, I really expected a family member to come through, but this is in particular guides. So there's probably a reason for that, which,
What
Well,
could
I'm
be the
glad you.
reason?
Oh, are you ready to go? Are you ready to go right now, Victoria?
you know, you always got to be careful when you say
Yeah,
Fuck.
because when you open it, it's a floodgate.
that. And I also have no filter.
Zero. You
None.
think I have no
Like
filter? You think I'm
mother,
blunt?
like child?
She's worse. She's
Yeah.
worse. I got to tell her to rein it in, and that's why I asked that question, because there have definitely been times when spirits, right, those who have passed, who are still connected to the earth realm, are saying like, hey, can you give me this message? Hey, can you give me this message? For example, and Mom, you know this story, but when I first started dating Andrew, his grandmother, who he was super close with and his family was super close
Yeah.
with, was kind of teeter-tottering on her way out. And she came to me before she passed, and she was basically like, I'm going to pass. Can you get them ready? Like, because she was nervous. She loved her family. She wanted them to be prepared. And I was like, girl, I have been dating him for 2 weeks. You think I'm going to step in his house and be like, your grandma's about to die? No, that is not the time. That is not the place. But it's like you said, the knowledge for me to be prepared,
Right.
because at that stage, he was not ready to communicate his feelings for me, or not for me, but to me. So having this knowledge of this is coming up, get prepared, get him prepared without having to say it, right? So my higher self stepped in and was like, you're not sending the message. They're telling you so you can be prepared. So it's that similar thing where sometimes
Right.
the message needs to be shared, but sometimes it's a message for you so that way you can help navigate the situation or help guide the person without saying, your dead grandmother exactly said this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Exactly.
sometimes that's hard to take. Although you just will walk up to anyone and be like, your dead relative is here
Yeah.
saying this.
Yeah. I have learned to, be a little bit more in tune to my higher self. But especially when I first came out, um, I had, and Ty, you know this story, I was sitting across from a friend of, I was friend with the mother, and her sons were friends with my daughters. They were little, they were in kindergarten. And this girl came in the kitchen, a friend of hers, and I have her father here. And he's, this is, this is, he's telling me his name, and I'm just like this. Look, I'm ignoring him. It's nope. And I'm having this conversation, and he's like, "You need to tell her I haven't." And in my head, I'm like, "Nope," because one of the part of my ability is I can have a conversation with you while having a conversation with the others, and it's who how I came in. And he went on, but he was so adamant, and this is how you know, and this is what Tara's saying. You'll know your higher self will tune in, your higher. But he pushed me. And this went on for probably almost 40 minutes of him talking to me. And he pushed me so much that I went like this. And now everybody's like, what's wrong with you? And then I relayed the message. But the message had to be relayed because it would have been extremely detrimental to her daughters if I did not. So in that case, the persistence of the spirit, that's when you know also. But I have stopped approaching people in the supermarkets.
Well, I mean, I can understand it being kind of overwhelming for
Yeah,
you when you walk into the supermarket with all these people who have their guides and their ancestors. And, like, I mean, we all know
yeah,
as soon as you open the door, like any energy that's around you is like, oh my God, thank God somebody answered. Like, hey,
yes.
buddy, like no matter how important it is. So I guess what you're saying is not only being attuned with your higher self to recognize when it's not right, but also if the entity is so persistent. Um, and I think something important to recognize too is, and we've said this with a couple of other people, but do you feel, Mom, that you can trust any entity that enters your field?
Not, you can't trust every today. No.
So if
You have to
someone
be
was being
very careful.
persistent, right? Because you're saying someone's being persistent, then that means that you need to say it. But is that always the case if it's not an entity that you know and trust?
For me, and some of them are sneaky, and I will point blank tell you that there are some sneaky ones that you don't recognize until your higher self, like kind of almost like separates and you get that tickle in the back of your head. But I get a different feel. Like I have a different feel from spirit guides that come in. Um, Archangels give me a different feel. Palladians, the Light Council, definitely give me a different feel. Spirit, those who have passed, different feel. It's a different energy. When my guides step up, I, I'm sweating. It's so that's how I'm able to gauge. And I'm lucky enough now because I consciously try to stay connected on a very, very light level, that you can kind of recognize something that's not good. It has a sleazy feeling. It has a sleazy feeling. It's like walking down a dark street and you just know you have to cross the street because somebody's energy is off. It's the same thing. It's all energetic, and you could feel it, but they are sneaky, and you have to be careful.
No, I'm really curious if you've ever channeled another being to the point where their voice took over and how you got your
Oh yeah.
voice back after channeling.
Okay, I have channeled quite a few times. Some purposely, um, some not so purposely. So the hardest ones to get back are the ones that kind of jump in when you least expect it, which is why your guard has to be up. So I honestly, the very first time that I did channel, um, was that the first time? The first time I channeled was my friend's dad, actually. If I remember, you know what? Tara, if you remember anything else before that, you'll have to correct me, but sorry. He, my face changed, my voice changed, I spoke like him, and he's Native American. Completely freaked my friend out. She was like, I don't know what's happening, what's going on. And I was able to intuitively, and because our souls were sharing a body, say, okay, you need to take a step back. And it's the process that you're doing that is it's like driving in a car and sitting in the back seat. And you see that soul or that entity in the front seat, and you know, okay, hey, somebody else is driving my body right now. And the mannerisms that happens in my readings, the mannerisms, the way I sit, the way I speak, that will take over. And normally you can step up. I'll step up. It's like, hey, my turn. But there were times where something has just jumped in, and I know what's going on and I have no control. That was scary. I was in our very, very first shop. I scared the heck out of my friends because I channeled somebody. It was a male who had high boots and he had a pocket watch and he was swinging and he ran a brothel. And he was so strong, which led me to believe he was a little bit more earthbound. And to get him out was a process. I had to push, and my friends had to make a physical connection with me, like hold my hands, and because at that point they recognized it. My most favorite channel, and Tara, you know the story, is where I scared everybody, apparently. I channeled, we did a meditation. I have this friend who does past life meditations, and he does healings, and it's fantastic. His ability is fantastic. We were in his house and he did a meditation, and I channeled a light beam. I will never forget the feeling of that. Sitting in a chair, I knew that the energy of this being was at least 1.5 feet taller than me. And I remember it, and I was completely present as a soul. And the first thing that this being said was, it looked through my eyes and it turned its head, just like this, and said, "This is what it's like to be human." So I knew at that moment had never been human. And it gave and there was about one, two, three, there might have been about 7 of us doing this meditation. It was a group meditation that he was running. I gave everybody one word. I told them, not me, the being told them, our souls came in here with one word. And the one word resonated with each of them. But because my energy was so strong, this being's energy was so strong, that the people in the room saw as if I had almost grew 1.5 feet, and they said my eyes became black.
Wow.
And as soon as it delivered the word for everybody, and it looked directly at each person and gave everybody a word, I came back. And I said when I came back, I said, wow, I just challenged a higher being. I- And I was ecstatic. And I went on vacation the next day. And when I came back, everybody thought I was possessed by some demon. And it was just, it was, it really actually stopped my connection for a while because I got so shook. I'm like, wait, what? That I shut, not because I thought I got, but I was just like, all right, I'm just going to shut this off because people are, and I was in the spiritual world. I had a shop. I was in the spiritual world when this happened, when, that human fear took over for everybody and causing me to take a step back. And now that connection is just that much stronger now because I came to realize, hey, that was, and people still talk about, remember when you did this? But they've also, what I like is that a few people have experienced it or have now connected with the Council of Light and they get it.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter now they're like, oh, wow, wow. But finding your voice after something like that, it was like, okay, you can have your body back. You can have the other entity who was more mundane and more earthbound. I had to fight for that. I had to fight to come back. And that also happened when we did that
The
investigation,
seance.
which,
Oh, well, yeah, hold
yeah,
on.
we'll
But
get to that.
something that I want to ask you about is I don't know because obviously I thought you were like not really that spiritual open at all, but clearly you were prior to what I thought you were. So maybe I'm perceiving this incorrectly, but I feel like when you were growing up and experiencing the spiritual realm, and even when you started your spiritual shop, when you were out of the spiritual closet, that the consciousness connection, although everyone's kind of at their own pace,
Hmm.
but the consciousness connection was on more of like a 4D realm where it was like
Correct.
very much connected to earthbound spirits or spirits that have just passed, as opposed to like
Correct.
recognizing the 5, 6, 7, 8 beyond D.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We started, you are 100% correct. And I feel like that's was almost their jump start to, hey, okay, we're preparing you for something, but you're 100% correct. That's where we were. And then we started getting downloads. And then it was like, hello, because here's the other thing when you're, and you too, right now, you don't understand how blessed you are to be experiencing this now. I mean, it's so funny to think about. It's like, okay, I knew what I knew, but I always thought, oh, well, this person says, that's not right, or that's not right. So when we started getting downloads, it was like, okay, we couldn't ignore it anymore. And then we realized things were shifting. And then I mean, I was 7 when I realized how everything was all connected. Every religion, every belief system, if you laid them out on a board and you compared them, you're going to see so many similarities that you cannot ignore it. But to get there, or to get there as a human, you have to experience all this. And we went from 4D and we were told we had to get ready for 5D and we had to get ready for, you know, and so the downloads started coming and that's when we started shifting.
Yeah, because I know if that were, say, Victoria, her and I channel all the time. Not necessarily where well, Victoria's a shapeshifter, so put that to the side, but not where maybe her voice changes all the time, but she's still channeling in. But like when I first heard that story about your friends being like, "Oh, it's a demonic possession," my mind was like, "Why?" Like they were saying something nice to you. They were saying, "Look how cool it is to be human." But if all you know is entities that have been human and have crossed and understand, and now you're getting something that's not human, and you don't understand that there's 5, 6, and beyond of light beings, I can see how terrifying that could be.
And, to give them the benefit of the doubt, I dealt with a phase of my life. So when I first met my group of people, that I practice with, they used to call me the demon slayer because I would recognize and see demons. Now I still do, but the problem is that I got caught up with that title that I am the demon slayer, that I didn't notice when one snuck in and started
Mm,
to control my life. So
mhm.
I'll give it to them that they got scared, and that's the only reason I was like, that's the only reason I'm like, okay, I could see where they might have gotten nervous because they watched me pull away from that. And they watched me make that a higher connection. And that, I think the eyes turning black is really what did it.
Well,
But,
yeah.
you know, but it's just that this being, its energy didn't have eyes. I mean, it had eyes, but it didn't have eyes. So it could be, I kind of gave them the benefit of the doubt later on, because at first I was very, okay, I don't know what's happening with you people, but I'm just going to step over here.
Can we talk a little
But
bit about the difference between this entity here that had never experienced being in the human body versus the earthbound energy you had to deal with? And was it more the earthbound energy just had this desire to continue being in human form, and that's what makes them earthbound?
so spirits that are earthbound normally, from what we understand, have unfinished business or just don't want to go. The problem is a lot of earthbound spirits, because they're still here, and I shouldn't say a lot, but there are quite a few that if they were not so good in life, they're not so good as an earthbound, but they also grow and learn to manipulate as if they were still in the human form. So all it does is give them like a leg up to be more manipulative, more dangerous, more. And an earthbound has because they're still have a leg, so to speak, in the human world, they're much stronger to keep a hold on you. And I'm, I, it's one of the things that fascinate me a little bit, because I can't figure out, how are you so strong? Well, I should say that used to fascinate me. How are you so strong to keep me? But the thing is somebody that is, or an entity or a being that is earthbound, tends to be more selfish. Somebody who's already on the other side and is in the light and experience the light, or a higher being, is not here to do harm to you or for their own purposes. It's here to relay a message. And that is what I learned. So that's why earthbounds, they have, they want to be human. They want to still control. They want to still experience life. Some have fear of going to the other side, which they shouldn't, but, and that's what I have surmised is the difference. Is one comes from love and healing, and the other comes from, nope, I still want to control and be selfish.
Would you say that
Some
they have learned how to maybe effectively feed off of human energy, and that's what's giving them so much power, so they go around and kind of suck up energy wherever they can as their source of
Absolutely.
power?
Absolutely. It's why when you come across something like that, you'll feel tired. Your face will get pale. You'll be very forgetful. I mean, to the point of, when I say forgetful, not like I'm forgetful because I walk in the ethers all the time, so they say, but will get turned around easily or confused easily, almost as if all of a sudden you go into the state of dementia. And
Yeah, yeah.
that's what they do, and they feed off that because that gives them more credence spiritually, more power spiritually. It is something to be wary of. It is.
I think I'm happy that you brought this up because it's such a hard thing to conceptualize as a human where I guess like if you look at it from like a religious standpoint of like heaven and hell, right? Like not that that's like legitimately like broken down in that way, but it's like okay, there are so many different energies that have existed on this planet, that are transitioning out of this planet, that have never been on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up with you being open, with you getting consistently spiritually attacked, whether it be by other spiritual humans or by
Mm-hmm.
entities. So where as much as I had this excitement and wanting to like dive more deep, there was also this consistent fear of, I just watched my mother get pushed. I just watched that glass break. I just watched this thing go off. I'm getting bloody noses. I'm getting sick. And I think what shifted for me was, because I was experiencing that, I was cultivating a frequency of fear, which is what these entities feed off of. So, what I
Hmm.
was doing was ultimately calling more to them. And it wasn't until I stepped into my power to say, actually, none of these entities can do shit to me if I don't let them, and that I raised my frequency to a point where I'm like living more in the 5D, knowing that I can like still talk to ancestors or Earthbound if I wanted to, but that they can't access me just because like we're not on the same channel anymore. But I think that, it's so important for people to recognize, because as we talk about these spiritual things, and Victoria and I talk about the light beings and all of that, like there are things that don't have our best intention. There are otherworldly beings, not just earthbound, that don't have our best intention. But if you hold the frequency of love, if you hold the frequency of your sovereignty, that there really is very little they can do to your physical being, because like you said, you went through a time where you were attached and
Hmm.
attacked. And that's something that I don't reflect on often, because like I know that wasn't you, so I don't like sit back and be like, remember when my mom was a real fucking bitch? Like, remember when she was like angry and like just like crazy? Like, what the hell was that? It's like, oh no, I remember when she was possessed, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to have so many experiences of entities that did not have our best intention,
Yeah.
and then now being in this phase where like I literally have not come across one, because I'm just not allowing that frequency to open.
But also, can I ask you, so, we grew up on the East Coast and we're now living on the West Coast. Do you think that being here where there aren't as many earthbound, it's very dense on the East Coast. So do you think that has anything to do with it? I mean, I also see your evolution and where you're at energetically, but I also want to acknowledge the difference between where we're living and where we came from.
I mean, for sure. I mean, like my mom said, we grew up in some places that already did not have the greatest
Hmm.
energy to start off with. Whereas I feel the Northwest is like so potent in such like beautiful new downloads coming in. But maybe that's why I was called to Portland when I was, because I was ready to match that frequency. I mean, Portland is not perfect. There are definitely people who don't hold that frequency and are living in fear and are experiencing shit. Um, but I honestly don't know, Victoria, because I can't tell if it's my evolution or if it is location or if it is both. Mom, you've
Yeah.
been here and you've lived, and we grew up on the East Coast. So what's your take on that?
It's interesting. I never looked at it like East Coast versus West Coast. And but I still live on the East Coast, so I don't want, walk out my door and people be like, yo, we heard what you said. But I mean, it could very well be, and it's what's coming to me now is it's also the East Coast. People are in that constant this,
Hmm.
and there's less connecting with nature. And I feel like that also contributes. Like the West Coast, you're out there and you can't help but connect.
Mhm.
But I do think the East Coast is a little bit, I mean, let's face it, it's the reason why I'm drawn to the mountains, because there's a different energy there. So it's very possible. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting concept. I gotta say, I'm on the fence about that. That that could that could be a thing.
I mean, it could very much will be the history of the Coast versus the West Coast as well, right? Like you had everybody
Right.
coming in on the East Coast and getting, trampled or kicked out or what, like there was a lot of colonization. But then even like when the Italians came or the Irish people came, like even that there was turmoil. So I wonder if that contributes as well, where
It could.
that's where the flood of people were coming during the time of suffering to grow as opposed to creation to grow.
Yeah,
So there's
that's
all
right.
that suffering not saying that there is no suffering over here, because the indigenous people also suffered over here. but maybe it was just such a flood happening at once that kind of solidified that energetic code in that space as well.
Yeah.
I actually read somewhere that limestone or places with a lot of limestone hold energy more, stronger. I don't know. Have you heard
Mm,
this before?
Oh, I've never
I have
heard
not.
that.
Yeah.
I'm going to look
Mm,
into that though.
yeah. I think I need to fact check myself too, but
Is there more limestone on the east or west coast? Do you know that?
East Coast for sure.
Mm.
Ah, that would
Well,
make sense.
actually, that does make a lot of sense too, because if there's more nature and connection, which is where we do a lot of our transmutation of energy, going
Mm-hmm.
back to the earth, coming through love, and then coming back filtered out. But the East Coast, I don't want to say the East Coast entirely. Like we're really looking at like the New York area
Right.
for the predominant of it, right? But that has less nature, but if it also has things that's storing the energy, not
Yeah.
transmuting the energy, of course it's going to keep it a
Mhm.
lot more at
Mhm.
like
Yep.
maybe the frequency of fear and suffering as opposed to the frequency of love that can be transmuted through earth.
And I
Yeah.
like thinking about
That's
it from the difference of nature, the land holding that energy, you're transmutating it, but then also the buildings, because I've lived in some really old buildings in Portland that had a whole lot of trauma and chaos still lingering, like in the floorboards, and
Mm-hmm.
had very terrible experiences. Like I could not sleep in some of those older spots. So now I feel like I have to live somewhere new with clearer, cleaner energy. So another way to think of it. It's not just the land, but also
Yes.
yeah. Yes.
everything.
Everything holds energy. Everything. That's why you cleanse your space, right?
Hmm.
Or set up new
Or
energetic grids. Yeah.
exactly.
So we have experienced a lot of paranormal things together, Mom. I know growing up, we always wanted to go find haunted houses or the like asylum on Staten Island to like go and sneak in and see what we can
Yep.
find. So, do you have any interesting stories as of late that you're willing to share about your experience with the, let's say, 4D realm, as people know it, the paranormal realm?
Yeah. So I have a friend, Terry, and he every year Terry puts together his group of friends, and we do a paranormal thing every year. And we did one not too long ago, and he wants to go back, and I'm not going to go back, but I'm jumping ahead. And it was I it was a horror movie in the making. I can smile about it now, but it was the horror movie in the making. So uh, went with my friend who was pregnant. There were four of us, myself and three friends. One was pregnant, and obviously the other two were not. And we went and we met them, Terry and his group, and they said to us, Terry says to me, "Listen, when you get up there, your phones are going to shut off because that's just the way the energy of the house is." And so we go to we pull in the driveway, right? Our phones work fine. We're like, Terry, I don't know what you're talking about. Our phones are working fine. Soon as we get there, soon as we get there, we immediately, my one friend who's pregnant, um, immediately she starts talking about the house and what it used to look like. And I'm seeing the house and what it used to look like, but she pinpointed details. Like she knew there was a crib behind the wall, and she knew, you know, something happened to the babies there. And we were taking a tour of the house, and it was like I could smell the blood on the walls, and I could see the blood on the walls from, they performed all types of abortions and everything. But immediately when we hit the front thing, and she was 8 months pregnant, as soon as we hit the steps, it was immediate. We go upstairs first in our room, and I go, my family, we call it the porcelain moments, always when you're in the bathroom. And I'm going to the bathroom, just going to say it, okay? It was a drive. I had to pee. I'm sorry. And this African American woman dressed in a maid's uniform with towels comes walking into the room. Now, when I say walking into the room, through the wall into the room, and she looks at me and she says, "The master's not going to like that you're here." And I said, "Well, that's too bad because we're here." And now she's holding towels. as she's talking to me, and she says, well, he's going to expect something in return. I said, oh, no, hell no, he's not. So I get up, I go into the room where we all are. My friend Terry's there and the three other women. I said, nobody's going to do anything with any spirits tonight because some spirits can be, earthbound spirits can also exhibit physical, urges, so to speak. Let's just put it that way. So now we're taking the tour where,
Yeah, she's talking succubus shit right
yeah,
now.
yeah, exactly. So I warned one girl in particular, you're not going there, okay? I'm not having this tonight. So as we're walking through the house, I'm hearing and I'm seeing this woman go up to my friend and put her hand and saying, my baby, my baby. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good.
Oof, I just got chills.
At the same time, my friend is turning around saying the same thing. I feel somebody wants my baby. I'm like, all right. The rule was, us four women, nobody leaves her alone. As we go through the house, though, and this is one of those cases of channeling, this master of the house channeled me twice, once, twice, three times, where I really thought, and I'm giving you like the Reader's Digest version, that I was going to walk across the cemetery and stab one of the tour guides because he was telling the story wrong. And my friend Terry and my other friends recognized that I was not there. And he was yelling from behind me. He calls me Ape because he's known me forever. And he's like, Ape, Ape. And he has a recording of it. And you can hear his voice and you can hear me muttering. And they had to shake me because, and I said to them, I knew I was going to walk across the cemetery and I was going to stab this guy. Now, I didn't have a knife in my hand, but in my mind, the soul that was in me, it was a knife. It was a flashlight, so I could have beat him. I just want to go back when they had a little group setting before we did this, and there was another medium there, and there was this Native American man who they were talking about the house, and they said, "Do you have any questions?" So I'm like, "Yeah, who's the master?" And she was like, well, how did you know that? I'm like, well, because this woman came in the bathroom and told me. So that there was angst and disapproval around them as well because they didn't like that I brought this forth. It was an ego thing, but that all played into who was the soul that was earthbound and running the house. So now, at, again, so many things happened. We went up in the attic and I completely channeled again, and I was seeing things that nobody else saw. And the Native American gentleman said to me, "Oh my God, you're the real deal." I'm like, "Okay, what?" Because he was talking, but I wasn't. All I could hear is bits and pieces because this other entity was so strong. This other spirit was so strong. So it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. Now you have to talk about, I'm going to sidebar this again and say, you're talking about four spiritual women who practice, who are very connected. At least three of us were very strong. And that three is the pregnant woman. The other person had her own demons to fight, which probably made her a little bit weaker. But so we're not novices in this. And I'm telling this because it became 1 o'clock in the morning and we were working with some ghost boxes and because this is what you do when you go to paranormal investigation, because the people that can't hear want to experience something. And we asked, do you want her baby? And it was dead to rights, yes. On the divining rods, the voice came through the box, and I went, that's it, up and out. So we left, we saged everybody in the house, we gathered our stuff. As soon as we left the property, our phones died. All right. Now our phones are working fine. In and out of this place was one straight road. You would go down the road and you would make a right or a left. We were lost on the same road for an hour and a half. There were no side streets. There were no lights because it was in the mountains, but there were no streets. And we drove up and down for an hour and a half. While we're driving up and down, my friend who's driving the car is sick as a dog. Sick, violently, both ends going. And all she keeps thinking to herself is, if we just go back, I'll be okay. If we just go back. And I'm hearing, just come back. Just come back. And I'm fighting with, I'm like, we're not. That's how strong the pull was, that we got down to the end of the road again. She had to get out of the car and throw up again. And I grabbed my phone because, hello, let's be smart about this. And I looked up and I yelled to my guides, I'm like, you have to give me something. You have to give me a bar, something to get us out of here. And I got one bar at that moment. And went back up the same road, and all of a sudden there was a street. An hour and a half. Hour and a half, 4 women in a car. Nobody saw the street. As we're going home, she's like, I can't make it. I can't drive. I can't do this. And I said to her, are you thinking if you go back, you're going to be fine? She's like, yeah. She goes, that's why I'm putting my foot on the gas pedal, because I know it's not me. I know that's not my voice in my head. We have to pull over because now the girl who's pregnant is getting pains in her belly. So we pull over, still not too far from it. And as we get out of the car, because I'm like, we need to get out and sage again, because whatever this pull is really tight. And this is what we believe. We surrounded ourselves with white light. We saged ourselves. We're standing like along a guardrail, and there's a ravine and some water. And they're saging. And as they're saging me, because I'm the last one to be saged, I'm watching this dark entity float from the direction we came across the ravine. And it's coming to me and it's pulling, saying, come back. And they light me on fire. Now, I need to explain that we spend years saging each other. Nobody's ever lit anybody on fire. Let's be real. It happened in Salem. Doesn't happen here. Okay. You don't light a witch on fire. It's not a thing. Okay. So they set me on fire. And I'm like, all right, guys, everybody back in the car. And it took us maybe about another half hour until we didn't feel the pull. We could have stopped. We had friends along the road that we could have stopped, and all of us had the same feeling. We wanted to get home. This thing followed us home. So it came at the bottom of my bed. And then at the time, I was sharing a house with one of the other women. And I heard it go in her room, and I heard her yell and moan. And at the time, her boyfriend was there, and I heard him jump up and saying, I don't know what the F you are, but get away. So he saw it because he also had abilities. And how I got it to go away is I called my guides in, and they said, we're going to help you this time. Go back there again. You're on your own. Mm-hmm. And I said, I won't go back there. And my friend Terry is constant, come on, we got to go back. We got to go back. And the only reason I'm not mentioning the name of the place is because people will take this story and they'll go. And it's not a place I would ever tell anybody to go. I used to work with another paranormal team, and I told them the story and they wanted to go. And I'm like, not happening, guys. You can go without me. Anybody can go without me. Won't go because my guides already told me, do this. Just recently, I read a book called Letters from the Light. My brother gave it to me. He mailed it to me. And you got to check it out. It was written in 1918 about a very famous spirit that passed on and channeled through a friend of his. And he had this person write letters. 1918. And he talks about the paranormal and how you never know what you're really dealing with when you deal with the paranormal. I found it very interesting because I'm like, huh. So yeah, that was a crazy, crazy experience.
That is why, like, the whole time I'm getting chills. I love spooky shit, so I was like, I feel like I'm watching a scary movie. But we are.
And I left out like some stuff only
Oh,
because, for time, but it
girl, I
really
know.
could have been, it could be, she knows, it literally could have been like a movie of the week. There is no doubt that this was, and not one of us will go back.
Mhm.
We're not in contact with the one person, but the other three of us, point blank, will not go back. Absolutely not. And we were warned, by the way. I was warned by two different people, don't do it. But I was like, well, I'm going to go. Won't go again.
So we're trying to open this door for a lot of people to experience spirituality, right? And this story is freaking terrifying. It makes me want to close the door sometimes. So, yes, we need to be mindful as we open ourselves up and be aware and we start making connections and contacting and channeling. And I know you said like you can't always trust, like you have to. So, can you tell the people like in those moments, like I know you've given me tips and tricks growing up for like when I'm unsure, when my heart feels that icky dark alley feeling, but I can't get up and leave my bedroom or I can't change my location. How can people say, all right, how do I know that I'm going to be safe? How do I know that, you know, that I'm going to be okay? Because yeah, these things happened. We both experienced them. Victoria, I'm sure you have. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
listeners have experienced some things that are not good, but we don't want that to stop us from exploring our spirituality and our connection to the frequency of love. So how do people navigate that?
So the best way to navigate that is going actually back to what you were talking about, Tara, is when you realize that light beings and your spirituality rising above that 4D and 3D and 2D, all those beings can only have control over you if you don't consistently step in that light and you don't consistently say, I'm serving a higher purpose right now. I'm serving, I'm coming at love and light. And in those moments when you can't leave your bedroom, when you can't leave the space, you call in those higher powers and you envision, you you have to know that you are surrounded. Your guides, your angels, your higher beings, they are there to keep you on your spiritual journey. You call them in for help, they know, okay, this person wants to get out of this or needs to see a sliver of light to lead their heart or their energy into a higher place, and it will work. It will absolutely work. And that's what you had. I tell people all the time, surround yourself with white light, put those hands out, because we have more power within ourselves than they want us to know, those lower beings want us to know. So as
Mhm.
soon as you realize that I have this innate power in me, I am a light being, I have all the light of the universe in me, and I pull it up and I push that out. And that's why I teach people, you may feel silly, but push your hands out, because the physical thing of doing that is saying, I believe this. If you don't do that sometimes when you're just starting, you're like, yeah, white light's around me. But if you push it out, and it'll come to you, and that light you'll be protected.
And I love that you said the word like believe because I think our attention and intention needs to be there, right? So I've experienced it myself where things were in the space that I was in trying to hurt me. And fearfully, I'm like, because you always told me visualize the white circle around you.
Mm-hmm.
Victoria's talked about the bubble around her, right? It's just that
Right.
protection, that shield we have up. And I've sat there like scared, like protect myself with white light, protect myself with white light. Is it gone? Is it gone? Right. And it's like still kind of there, but it's when I tell myself like, and I believe that it's going to work because belief, intention is what actually creates that frequency. So
Right.
when you believe it and you say, no, I am protecting myself with white light, I have, and mom and Victoria, I'm sure you too, have physically seen them not break the barrier. Not like
Yep.
literally, like as much as they can
Absolutely.
bang on the walls, like let me in, if they really wanted to, they cannot touch you. They cannot
No.
affect you if you have that intention to protect yourself and hold on to the frequency of love or light or divine.
Exactly. Exactly. A hard thing to do when you're a human is to keep that in mind, but we really do. They don't want you to know how much power you have. Any lower entity doesn't want you to know. But the problem is that more people are becoming more aware, so it's harder for them. They're still
Yeah.
there, but it's harder for them. Too many people are becoming more aware. Too many people have shifted into 5D, so um, they're not happy about it. But
Can I
A
can I
therapist.
play a quick devil's advocate here?
Hmm.
So that experience that happened not too long ago, after you've already recognized the light beings and the ability to protect yourself, is that did that all happen to you because you kind of let that chill down and you were like, let's fuck around with this? Because
I
if you're saying you
think
protect yourself with white light, then you shouldn't be throwing up, getting your baby stolen, and getting lit on fire. You know what I mean?
exactly. I think right. I think exactly it was that. It was not so much let us fuck with this, but oh, we got this. It was we got this. And Terry asked me, it's like, what's so different from here? I said, because it's thick there. And I have to remember that regardless, things can get in. I mean, our other thing too, it was dividing, right? Our focus was to protect one person. So when your
Mm-hmm.
focus is protecting one person, you're not really 100% protecting yourself,
Mm.
especially in that moment, So just try not to put yourselves in, pay attention
Well,
to your
one of
guides before
yeah,
you go.
yeah, one of our other interviewees, Eben, mentioned that it becomes muscle memory to protect yourself. So I
Hmm.
guess in those moments of stepping into or exploring a space that is quote unquote thicker or has entities that are earthbound, you're saying like you need to be more intentional instead of just using the muscle
Exactly.
memory of, yeah, I have a shield up. I don't need to worry about
Right.
that. But like, no,
Exactly.
this space feels weird. Let me double up, triple up, quadruple up my shield.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, will you tell us a little bit about the services you provide and what a reading looks like with you?
Sure. So I communicate with, I do medium readings, I do spirit guide readings, I do manifestation station classes. I will be having classes coming up, a summer series, by the way, in starting in July. I'm going to kick it off in June with my goddess class, embracing your feminine energy, and then kick into mediumship, and then it's called the Divine Source series, and then spirit guide, and then a faith and manifestation class come September. When I connect with the person and how I know not to step away from my ability to communicate with spirit or spirit guides or otherworldly beings is because the people that come to me need healing. They need love. And that's the purpose of my gift. So when you're sitting one on one with me, if it's in person, I will touch your hand. If we are doing like this via Zoom, we take 3 breaths in, heart chakra to heart chakra, connect that energy. And I will bring the messages from the other side. I am a telephone. And that is what I tell people. The messages I get, I will ask them to clarify if I don't understand it. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to the person at that moment because it's a lot. It's a lot for a person to take in messages, but it always resonates with them somewhere along the line. And I always know that this is my ability, this is my gift, and keeping myself humble and gracious. I'm full of gratitude for this to be able to help people. So that 45 minutes that I sit with this person, that's what it's about. It's about healing and laughter, and even through the tears, it brings them some sort of peace and calm, whether they're communicating with their loved ones or they're communicating with their guides. It's like I'm not alone, and that's the basis for what I do. Is
Mm.
you're not alone, and I just give them a little bit of that insight so they get to feel like, hey, I'm not alone. There's people out there, entities out there that watch over me and send me love. It's an amazing gift to have. It's an amazing way. I'm so glad my soul chose to come in like this for this lifetime.
Me too.
Thank you.
So, of course, I'm dying to ask, what was it like raising Tara?
Uh, so it's so funny because it's like, having a mini me, right? But you forget. There were some struggles, okay? Because first of all, when you have an intuitive child and she's so tapped in, there's a lot of things she shouldn't know.
That's
So
a
you had
fact.
to, it was a constant block. but raising her she was extremely insightful, and she was probably more insightful and more in tune because of what I was going through. I was a lot in the mundane world. Where raising her at that time, when she was so open and so full of love, she had the ability to heal or give insight to people, and myself included, that just it resonated. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if Tara's told you the story about the mother and daughter fighting on the bus,
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
and she
Mhm.
just gets up from the seat and she takes their hands, and she was like 3 or 4, and she just puts their hands together, and she just looked at them. She stood there for a moment and just looked at them, and then she came back and sat with me, and it just calmed. I mean, everybody on the bus was like, what just happened? Like, what actually happened? I could see the mom like had tears in her eyes, and I'm thinking, this is my child, you know. But now I had to shield her also, because she was extremely empathic. So it was like, no lie, every night was a cry fest. Every, when she
Aw.
went through a period of every night was a cry fest, because
Yeah.
it wasn't just her emotions dealing with it, but it was the emotions of all her friends, because she was sitting at a table and not only hearing anything that was going on, but feeling how the other one felt. So I had to, Tara, whose feelings are those? Are those your feelings? And sometimes I'd have to be like, you know what? Too bad for them. Like, I would have to be tough mom. Like, too bad for them. Like, you can't. That can't be yours.
Is
One of
that
my
why? Like,
favorite.
I'm tearing up right now. Like when you were like, oh, and I don't know why, but like maybe that's why when people like talk to me about their feelings and they're like, but what about this person? I'm like, that's their problem.
Yeah,
That's their
because
You
problem.
do say that a lot.
especially for especially for an empath, you cannot take that on, because that stays in your energy.
Hmm.
And if you don't clear it, and that's, I could have I should have taught Tara to clear a little bit more, but I was still myself learning how to let go of energy, because I held on to a lot of energy. But that's, as an empath, you're holding on to that. You're taking everybody's stuff. It's like, I got a backpack and I got everybody's stuff. It's in my hat, it's in my pockets, it's in my, under my armpits, it's everywhere. One of my favorite stories is Tara came home and she says to me, Mom, when I come back from lunch, there's a kid in my seat. So now I'm doing the dishes. I'm total mundane mom at this moment. I said, all right, Tara, did you ask him to move? I asked him to move. He doesn't listen to me. I'm like, what does he say? He doesn't say anything. I'm like, Tara, did you tell the teacher? She's like, Mom, I'm the only one that sees him. I'm like, okay, hold on. Hold it. Shut the water off, took off the gloves. And I had to explain to her, okay, so you see people and you need to communicate this way. And she went into school the next day and she described him, and he was definitely an older kid with a cap, and like, we're talking probably 1920s kid, maybe. And she got him. I taught her, okay, this is how you have to communicate, and she managed to get. But it was like, I'm like, oh yeah, wait, you're like me. Hold on a second.
I don't
So
remember that story.
yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
it was great. It was great, and
How old was
seeing
I?
things. You were in grammar school, so I want to say you were probably, I think it was second grade.
Oh
I think it
yeah,
was
I don't
second
remember
grade.
that.
And seeing all the people in the house that we lived in with her uncle, and raising her was interesting, because I got a lot of insight into myself. I got a lot of insight on how to dial back and not be so tough. Watching her empathicness and realizing, okay, this is how this is affecting, and not that it, you know, still was tough, or taught them to be tough. So it was a learning experience. I got to see glimpses of things, and Tara has always been surrounded by light beings, because we have pictures of her surrounded by light beings. So it was fascinating for me. It was a never-ending anomaly of what's going to happen next. What's going to happen? What is she going to say next, or who is she going to see next, or who's she going to rat out, because she always knew. She always knew stuff. Yeah, but it was.
Well, can I ask? I know you can't say that I'm your favorite child, even though we all know that already. And I know that I'm at
Oh,
this stage in my life more I shouldn't say more aware, but more open to our abilities than our other siblings or my other siblings. But growing up, do you feel that I was the most aware?
I want to say that you when it's very weird because all your siblings experienced it very, very strongly experienced what you did. You were the more aware and the more open and understanding, where they took their experiences and shut it off completely.
Yeah.
Um,
They were more scared.
yeah. And I mean, rightfully so, like your older brother got terrorized by them.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
but that would explain, if you think about it, we were going through a divorce at that time, and he had all this anger. So anything
Mm.
negative was, so it would make sense.
Yeah.
That anger, it drew them in. So you were definitely the more, your soul came in more gifted and more aware. Absolutely.
Siblings, do you hear that? More
And
gifted, more gifted than you.
Anthony's going to go. And that's why she's the favorite. That's what he's going to say.
Oh well, sorry. I will say, just for the record, I was also scared, but I love being scared. So I remember I had a
Yeah.
ghost friend in one of our houses, and for lack of imagination, called him freaking Casper. Like, okay, bitch.
Yeah.
And it would like throw things at me, and I would like antagonize. I'm like, yeah, that's all you got. And then like it hit me once, and I was like, oh, never mind. I don't like this anymore. And
Yeah.
that's when I came to you. I was like, Mom, they threw a lamp at me, and you were like, okay, Tara, stop antagonizing them, please.
Yes. Yeah. That's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Well, regardless of
So,
who's the favorite, I just have to say thank you for bringing this beautiful soul, my partner, my co-host, my mentor, my friend, Tara. She, I mean, is such a gift to this world, and I'm so appreciative of you, April, sharing your gifts and
oh,
watching
thank you.
it evolve and face your fears. And I mean, I see so much of my wakening up and my stepping into my power and through your story. And so it's giving me a lot of hope and optimism that, it doesn't have to be all dark alley, icky
No,
feelings.
it's more light and love than dark alley. And that's
Mhm.
what people have
Mhm.
to remember and hold on to. They really do. In any way, shape, or form. Whatever your faith, whatever your belief, if you hold on to that light and that love, that's going to be stronger than anything. There's more of that out there than people realize.
And I really feel that strength come through you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
You're
just being
welcome.
here and willing to do this with us.
Yeah, thank
We're
Oh,
you.
going
I
to
feel blessed that I can do this with you. So,
we're going to have links to her Instagram and how you can contact her below. Like she said, she's starting some new courses this summer. So
hmm,
check that out because
thank
I've
you.
taken a couple of them and they're phenomenal.
Thank you.
Ah, thank you so much, Mom.
You're welcome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Victoria, you have an amazing light. So the two of you work your light is very well together. So it was
Thank
a pleasure
you.
meeting you.
Thank
And it
you.
was
Likewise.
awesome doing this. I loved it. Thank you so much for having me.